Hi, Kim here at Wild Hearts and Wildflowers, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in July and August. In July, I read 9 books, 2 nonfiction and 7 fiction. Let's tackle the 2 nonfiction first. I read The Nature Fix, Why Nature Makes Us Happier, Healthier, and More Creative. This was published in 2017 and written by Florence Williams, a reporter who does a really good job investigating throughout the year as she wrote this book into the scientific reasons that nature is so good for us. Because we have all heard it's good for us, but why and how? And I did a review of this book on my other channel, my gardening channel, because, it's about nature and how nature helps us. But I just was blown away because I have read a lot of nonfiction books about nature, and I personally have experienced the many positive benefits of spending time in nature. But this book, in a very conversational style, really explains the practical and more creative benefits to just spending a small amount of time regularly out in nature, like I am right now. So, yeah, I definitely recommend this book for you if you would like to get healthier and if you'd like to boost your creativity. Now, the second nonfiction book I read was completely different. It was a self-help book. I'd never heard of this author or this topic before even, but somehow I found it. And I really I don't know if enjoyed is the right word. I really learned a lot and found this very interesting. It is Running on Empty, Overcoming Your Childhood Emotional Neglect by Dr. Jonas Webb. Now, I just will quickly say my parents were great, but they were very young. They had me when they were 18, and they were also very, very, very committed and connected to each other. They were a very deep love story for many, many years, 46 years, until my mom passed away. And they were each other's lives, which was great to see. But I just will say, though nothing negative was done to me in childhood, there were things that just didn't happen, that were just missing. And so this book talks about that and how we as adults tend to try to fill those gaps in different ways. So yeah, I found it extremely helpful just to be enlightened about the possibilities of why I am the way I am. All right, let's move on to the fiction. First up, I read number 3 in the Ground Rules Cozy Mystery series by Emmeline Duncan, and that was Flat White Fatality, published in 2023. Another good addition to this series, really enjoying the Portland setting and all the coffee talk. And then I read number 5 and the final, as of now, a book in the Somerset Stories Regency romance series by Mimi Matthews. It's called A Lady of Conscience. And like all the other ones, good, interesting characters. And really love this series. Then I discovered, and it's crazy that I say discover because this series has been around a while. The first book was published in, 2018, so 6 years ago now. But, I'd heard of it, but I hadn't got around to reading it. As soon as I did, though, I read all the books in 1 month. So this is the Lady Astronaut series by Mary Robinette Kowal, and I read book 1, The Calculating Stars, book 2, The Faded Sky, book 3, The Relentless Moon, and then I read the short story, which is supposed to be book 4.5, called The Lady Astronaut of Mars. Now, book 4 in the series is coming out in the beginning of 2025. Can't wait to get to that. But this is sci-fi. This is speculative history because it actually starts in 1952 with a catastrophic event and sets things rolling in a slightly different way than they actually did in 1952. And it's about space travel, and it's about women empowerment, and it's also just about humanity and how we relate to each other. I really, really, really liked this series. And finally, another book I really loved, published just this year in 2024, written by Freya Sampson, Nosy Neighbors. Now, this is a contemporary cozy mystery, but, in the style of the Vera Wong book by Jesse Sutanto. And the found family theme and the coziness of this can't be beat. The mystery was good. Looking forward to more books by this author. And now August. I read a lot of books in August. I am not sure how I did this, but I know why I did this. I got sucked into some series I absolutely adored. So I read in 3 different series this month, as well as 2 standalone books. So the first series I found and rapidly devoured was the Countess of Harley Mysteries, the cozy mystery series set in Regency, England, written by Diane Freeman. I read all of these on Kindle Unlimited, and they are just so fun and so funny and, really well done. The research was very good on these. But I love the fact that time is just passing and you're seeing a lot of character growth in them too. So I read books 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, bringing me current. There is a 7th one out. I'm trying to wait till it comes out on Kindle Unlimited. Trying to be good. So book 1, A Lady's Guide to Etiquette and Murder. Book 2, A Lady's Guide to Gossip and Murder. Book 3, A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder. Book 4, A Fiance's Guide to First Wives and Murder. And book 5, A Bride's Guide to Marriage and Murder. And then book 6, A Newlywed's Guide to Fortune and Murder. There are 2 things I really liked about this series. One is the humor. It's just really consistent throughout and really just struck my funny bone anyway. And the second thing I really liked are the characters. Aside from the character growth that you see happening consistently, I also loved the side characters. The extended families of both of the 2 main characters are just a lot of fun, and you really get to know all of the people in the books. The characters, all the side characters, continue from book to book. So it just is a very well done series and really enjoying it. Then I also read some more of Mimi Matthews' Regency romances. Now I haven't read Regency romance in probably a couple of decades. I just happened to discover this year through recommendations of BookTubers some new authors that they just sort of clicked with me, and I find them to write in a novel way, and I'm really enjoying them. Mimi Matthews, for instance, just really like her writing style. So I started another series by her. I actually skipped the first book because I couldn't find it available for cheap enough, but I started with the second book because the plot sounded really good and I really, really liked it. It was The Belle of Belgrave Square, the second book in the Bells of London series. Then I went ahead and read all 4 books in her Parish Orphans of Devon series. They were, number 1, The Matrimonial Advertisement, number 2, A Modest Independence, number 3, A Convenient Fiction, and number 4, The Winter Companion. Now, as I've said about Mimi Matthews' writing in the past, what I like about the way she does her books is that her characters are unusual in a couple of ways. One, she writes the characters more deeply, like you actually get to know a lot about them, but also her characters are not stereotypical. You don't have the rake or the blue stocking. They do different types of things. They have different kinds of occupations, they have different kind of hobbies, different personalities than you usually see in Regency romances. For instance, in one of her books, the male lead character writes secretly fiction, romances actually. And I've never read a book like that, let alone in a Regency romance. So I find her books just really enjoyable. Okay, I had to change position because the sun was just glaring off of me and the camera and everything. So the last series I discovered in August I'm just so happy to find it. It's a cozy mystery series, but unlike any I've ever read before, and I have read a lot of them. I started reading cozies about the time they became popular, back when Joanna Fluke was writing. And so, she still is, but when she started. So this series is written by Gigi Pandian, and she has a few different series. This one is called the Accidental Alchemist series. And I didn't really know what I was getting into when I started it, but I love her writing style, and I love her characters, her main character especially. She is, an accidental alchemist. I had no clue what that meant when I started it. Of course, I've heard of alchemy, but what she was going to do with it, I had no idea. And I just love it. So the main character is on the surface, an herbalist. And so the book is full of gardening, and more than that, it's full of what she does with the herbs she grows. But on a much deeper level, it's about alchemy and all that means, which I won't spoil. And it does have a supernatural element because, well, that's what true alchemy entails. And that supernatural element did require me to suspend disbelief, which I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do because it has a living gargoyle in it. Now, that's not a spoiler because it's written all over the backs of these books. And is on the cover of these books. And I didn't know how I was going to deal with that. That just sounded crazy. But I actually love the gargoyle. He's one of my favorite characters in the series. And I think you might just like him too. He's French. He's a fantastic chef, and he loves reading Agatha Christie mysteries. He has to learn to cook vegetarian or actually vegan, because the main character is vegan. But yeah, I actually have come to love this series. So I read books 1 through 5 in August: The Accidental Alchemist, number 2, The Masquerading Magician, 3, The Elusive Elixir, 4, The Alchemist's Illusion, and 5, The Alchemist of Fire and Fortune. And I would suggest, even if this sounds kind of out there for you and not one you would normally pick up, that you give it a try. By book 2, I couldn't put them down, obviously, and just kept reading, and I'm still reading because there are more. Now, as to the 2 standalone fiction titles I read, the first one was by Hester Fox, and the title was The Last Heir to the Blackwood Library. Now, I have to say that when I started reading this book, I fell in love immediately with the writing style. I mean, I consciously thought, oh, I have found a new favorite author. I love this. I'm immersed in this world of, post-war London, and this character that has been introduced. I just really love the writing style. And I was just looking forward to this whole book, thinking, wow, I have found a new favorite. Sadly, as the book went on, I was disappointed. Now, if you love truly gothic fiction, you might just really love this book. But for me, even though I do like gothic fiction, it got a little too gothic. Around about midway through the book, 2/3 of the way through the book, it just got a little too much for me, a little too dark, a little too bloody, a little too supernatural. Even though I do like some, if not quite a bit, of supernatural in some of my books, this one was just a little bit over that edge, especially toward the very, very end. I was hanging on, and I did, of course, finish it. I did like the book, but not nearly enough to keep reading more of her, sadly. Now, the other standalone book I read was a long-awaited sequel that Margaret Peterson Haddix finally wrote, middle grade sci-fi, but it was the long-awaited sequel, like almost 30 years awaited, to the Running Out of Time book she wrote back in 1995. And this one is called Falling Out of Time. She does some tricky maneuvering here, some really good writing, circling back to the plot lines in that first book, but yet differentiating them. And you will see some familiar characters and just a very interesting take on what if. And so I did really enjoy it. I will say, though, the first one, still far better. It's still, by far, in my opinion, the best book she wrote, even though it's short. It was just so good. Now, maybe this is just a personal thing for me, probably is, because I love history so much. And back in the day, as in when I was middle grade, pioneer American history was such a big fascination of mine. And that first book really tapped right into that. So that might be why I hold that first book of hers so highly in my mind. Yeah, because I do like her sci-fi stuff too. She's a great author. If you enjoy middle grade, I highly suggest you check her out. So that wraps up what I read in July and August 2024. Now I'm up to date, so I feel good about that. And soon I'll be back with you for what I read in September. I would love to know what you have read over the summer, so let me know in the comments below. And if you've read any of the books I mentioned here, what did you think of them? Until next time, happy reading.